Imagine this. You're in the middle of a hectic day, trying to meet a deadline, and then, out of nowhere, something pushes you over the edge. A snide comment, a rude email, maybe even a sudden crisis. Do you feel the tension bubbling inside, the urge to lash out, to react impulsively? Many of us have been there, caught in those split-second moments where our emotions threaten to control us, rather than the other way around. But what if, instead of reacting in the heat of the moment, you could pause, take a breath, and respond with clarity and calm? That's the essence of Stoicism, training the mind not to react, but to respond. Stoicism has this incredible power, one that teaches us to take control of our inner lives, our emotional responses, and our mindsets. But how do we make this transformation? How do we go from reacting impulsively to responding thoughtfully? Here, we're going to dig into the heart of Stoic practice, exploring examples, scenarios, and personal stories that reveal the art of response. So buckle in, because this is where the real work of self-mastery begins. The art of the pause. Let's start with a scenario that I think most of us can relate to. Imagine you're in a meeting, presenting an idea that you've worked tirelessly on. You're excited, hopeful even, but then someone interjects with a sharp critique, dismissing your work without a second thought. How do you react? The instinct might be to snap back, to defend yourself. But what if instead you paused? The pause, this tiny intentional moment of stillness, is where Stoicism starts to take root. It's in this space between stimulus and response that we find freedom. This is where we can choose our reaction rather than letting our emotions choose for us. The ancient Stoics, like Marcus Aurelius and Epictetus, believed that our true power lies in controlling how we interpret events rather than the events themselves. I once faced a similar situation. During a critical project at work, my proposal was openly criticized in a meeting. My initial reaction was a mix of anger and embarrassment, but I remembered something I'd read about Stoicism, that the moment we pause, we take back control. So, instead of reacting, I took a breath, acknowledged my feelings internally, and responded with, "I'd like to understand your perspective better. Can you elaborate?" This shift changed everything. Not only did it keep the conversation constructive, but it also set a tone of mutual respect. That's the strength of the Stoic pause. Realize what's in your control. A fundamental tenet of Stoicism is the understanding of what is within our control and what isn't. The Stoics encourage us to focus on our inner world, our judgments, desires, and choices, rather than trying to control external events. Think about how often we exhaust ourselves trying to change things beyond our influence, the behavior of others, outcomes, even random events. Stoicism teaches that when we grasp what we can actually control, we can move through life with a sense of peace that others might mistake for detachment. One personal story comes to mind here. A few years ago, I was on the verge of securing a long-awaited promotion. It was a position I'd worked for over the years, and I felt certain I was the top candidate. But then, things took an unexpected turn. Another colleague, someone with less experience, was chosen instead. I was devastated, angry, and tempted to voice my frustration to anyone who would listen. But again, Stoicism nudged me in a different direction. I asked myself, what is truly in my control here? My reaction, how I chose to interpret this setback, was all I could control. So, rather than harboring bitterness, I decided to view the experience as a stepping stone, as a moment to practice resilience. I turned my focus to self-improvement, learning from what I could have done better, and ultimately took the feedback seriously. Looking back, I now see that this response strengthened me in ways I wouldn't have imagined. That's the magic of Stoicism. It empowers us to reshape our minds, to see obstacles as opportunities. Recognize emotions, but don't let them rule you. Stoicism doesn't mean denying or suppressing emotions. Instead, it encourages us to recognize emotions without becoming enslaved by them. Emotions are signals, responses that tell us something about our values and our environment. But Stoicism warns us against letting emotions make decisions for us. Imagine walking into a family gathering where tensions are high. You know there are unresolved conflicts simmering under the surface, and the slightest comment could spark an argument. In such situations, the Stoic approach is to observe your emotional reactions without acting on them impulsively. Think of your mind as a clear lake, with emotions as ripples that appear on the surface. The key is to let them pass without disturbing the deeper waters of your calm. I've had moments where a relative would bring up a sensitive subject, and every nerve inside me wanted to react defensively. But then I'd remind myself to observe the emotion. I'd say to myself, "This is anger. I'm feeling it, but I don't have to act on it." With practice, I found that these feelings would pass, and I was able to respond calmly or even change the topic gracefully. It takes work, but the peace of mind it brings is well worth the effort. The power of perspective. Perspective is one of the most powerful tools in the Stoic toolkit. Marcus Aurelius advised that we should look at what is happening to you as though it is happening to someone else. By stepping outside of ourselves, we can detach from our emotions and assess situations more objectively. Consider a time when you felt insulted by a friend or colleague. Maybe they said something thoughtless and you felt wounded. The natural reaction is to defend your ego, to harbor resentment. But what if, instead, you tried to view the situation from a Stoic perspective? Ask yourself, if I were watching this happen to a friend, what advice would I give them? Often, this shift helps us see things more clearly and prevents us from reacting impulsively. I recall an instance where a close friend made a harsh comment during a conversation. My initial reaction was one of hurt, but I paused and thought about it from a Stoic perspective. I reminded myself that people sometimes speak from their own pain or frustration, and it isn't always about me. By seeing the comment as a reflection of their state rather than a personal attack, I found I could respond with empathy instead of anger. Cultivate inner tranquility. Inner tranquility. This is the ultimate aim of Stoic practice. It's the steady, calm mind that remains unshaken by external events. Achieving this isn't about avoiding challenges or removing yourself from the world. It's about learning to hold peace within yourself, regardless of what's happening around you. Think of it as building an inner citadel, a mental fortress that stands firm amidst life's storms. The next time you feel stressed or overwhelmed, try visualizing this fortress within you. Imagine your mind as a place of strength and serenity, a sanctuary where you can retreat. This visualization alone can help reinforce your ability to respond rather than react. Applying Stoicism in everyday life. In our daily lives, we're constantly given the chance to practice Stoicism. From handling criticism to dealing with setbacks to managing disagreements, each moment presents an opportunity to choose a response over a reaction. By embodying these principles, practicing the pause, discerning control, recognizing emotions, gaining perspective, and cultivating inner tranquility, we become more resilient, peaceful, and wise. So next time you're on the verge of reacting, remember that you have the power to pause, to breathe, and to respond with calm clarity. Stoicism isn't about detachment. It's about liberation. The freedom to act according to our highest values, to respond with integrity, and to live life on our own terms. And that, truly, is the essence of a life well lived. Final thoughts. Training your mind to respond rather than react is no small feat. It's a journey, a practice, and at times, a battle against our own impulses. But it's also one of the most rewarding practices we can undertake. By choosing to respond with wisdom instead of reacting with emotion, we build a life of resilience, grace, and peace. Stoicism invites us to embrace this challenge with open arms, knowing that every step brings us closer to a mind that is free, a heart that is calm, and a life that is genuinely in our control. So ask yourself, in those moments when you feel the urge to react, will you choose the path of reaction or the path of response?